Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dreams Unlimited Travel Podcast. My name is John Magi, and I'll be your host. And in this episode, we're going to be answering your general travel-related questions. I'm joined at the table by our panel of experts, Client Services Manager for Dreams Unlimited Travel, Kevin Close.
Hi, everyone.
Agent Consultant for Dreams Unlimited Travel, Tracy Heinrichs.
Hi, everyone.
Back in our production facility. You didn't do that thing? You went to me first. I was all ready for you. Back in our production facility, we have our producer, Craig Williams.
Oh, hi.
And, I thought there was more people here. Yes, thank you all for joining us, for being here and watching and listening to our show.
Are you having a stroke?
No, there was an episode where Craig said he went to me before I introduced him, and now he didn't. And it's thrown me all off. My mojo's all off. So we're going to do general travel-related questions and answers. Again, these are questions that I've gotten from Twitter and directly people asking us, or even stuff I found on our YouTube comments where people have asked follow-up questions of other stuff we've done. Again, if I don't get to your question on this episode, it just means I have saved it for a future episode for us to use. So let's get cracking. All right, our first question. I know you did a hurricane show before, but with cruises, when do you get notified about changes or canceled cruises? Can you move your cruise once a change is communicated? You're generally told when they tell you to put your life jacket on and get in the boat. That's usually when you know. No, just kidding. We know as soon as the cruise line decides.
Right.
So it's really up to them to make that decision as to when that happens.
And sometimes it's a few days in advance. Sometimes it's a day. It's a very fluid situation. And the problem that happens, and you can, with just the hurricane that just came through recently, what was that one? Dorian. That thing, oh my God. It was like the hurricane that would never end. And so it was an example of why you can't make changes and announcements too soon, because that thing changed so many times. Right. I started out thinking it was going to hit my place in Florida, and it ended up hitting my place in New Brunswick, of all places. Like it was
coming. It wasn't coming.
Yeah.
And this goes on for a week beforehand. So no cruise line is going to let you make changes until they're sure of what's going to be effective.
And like I said, it can be a few days before, it can be last minute. As soon as they know and decide, they let you know. They let us know. They're usually,
we let you know.
Yeah, and they're usually pretty flexible by that point as far as deciding, if they're changing itineraries. Sometimes if it's changing itinerary, you have no choice because it's right in your cruise contract that they have the right to change itinerary as they need to, change ports. So in that case, typically there's no recourse. Sometimes when there's extreme change, like recently a 3-night had to become like a 5-night, then it became a 6-night. In that situation where they announced that change, people were able to cancel if they wanted to, get a refund, get a credit towards a future cruise. So it really depends on the situation of what you can do. But I think Disney's pretty fair, and all cruise lines really are pretty fair when it happens.
And the good news is, if they think a certain area is going to be affected, a cruise line has some flexibility to change and avoid that area.
Right. Course.
So your cruise might still go, you just might not go to the place you thought you were going to go.
Just this past week, the Fantasy was changed from an Eastern to a Western, just because there was a new storm coming up that was going to kind of affect a little bit on the Caribbean side. So
yeah, and sometimes it's while you're on the cruise. Mm-hmm. With some clients who couldn't get to Castaway Cay.
I've been on a cruise where we couldn't get to Castaway Cay because it was too windy.
Right. So they make those decisions on the fly. They're very good about it. First of all, safety first.
Absolutely.
They want you to be safe. There's no problems for many different reasons, but mostly for your safety. So they're going to make sure they're avoiding these storms, that they're doing the right thing for you as their guest, and then also communicating that out to either the travel agency or to you personally.
And anybody that's booking a cruise should also go into it with that idea. That I know you've been looking forward to this, but if it's not safe and the cruise is canceled, it is for your safety.
They don't take those decisions lightly.
Right.
You think about how much revenue a cruise line is losing when they have to cancel a sailing or change a sailing. So they're not entering into that lightly.
No, absolutely not.
From the safety of you, but also the safety of their ships, of their crew. So this is not a light-made decision. And while it might stink and kind of suck real bad, It wasn't made in haste.
And it wasn't made to spite you.
Right.
One of the things that happened in this last one, Dorian, because you talked about how it changed course and it slowed down and it sped up. We had clients who were saying, well, I want to change my cruise because this is coming. And we had to tell them, well, then that's at your own expense.
Right.
Because Disney has not made that announcement. Royal Caribbean has not made that announcement. So they're still planning on going. I had my brother on a trip out of Miami, and he came to me and he said, they're not canceling my cruise. What do I do? I said, you should go.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be at your house anyway.
Right. They were going to evacuate
They're going
anyway.
to evacuate their house anyway if it hit. I said, you're going to go out away from the storm. You're going to have a great time. And he came back and he said, you're absolutely right. He said, they did go further south than they were supposed to go, change of ports of call, but the weather was fantastic.
I have had Adventures by Disney work with me when a hurricane would not affect your destination, but it might affect your home airport. And travel companies are aware of that. If a hurricane is, I'm going to give you an example. If you're flying out of Miami and the hurricane is, flying or heading for Miami, they will be flexible with you in that they know you're flying from Miami, but there's not a hurricane in Italy.
Right.
So let your travel agent work with the travel company.
We had that experience personally with a Royal Caribbean sailing where the hurricane was heading for Florida. This was several years ago. And
It was in 2004.
and we were going to Alaska, cruising out of Alaska. And we called Royal Caribbean. Now, luckily, Royal Caribbean's officer in Miami.
Fort Lauderdale.
So they said to us, listen, we're closing the doors. We'll figure this out later.
Let's talk later.
Do what you want to do. We're out of here. So, yeah, they're very understanding of that. This is, again, safety first, not taken lightly.
But if you're choosing to make decisions prior to an official announcement, it's on your dime. And it, in a lot of cases, doesn't matter if you have insurance, because insurance companies are also not paying out on your personal opinion
Right.
of whether it's safe or not.
If you're scared to go, that's not a covered expense.
Right. Right.
But just be forewarned that they have your best interest at heart. It's not, they're not doing it
And there's a
Great
reason
issues.
your cruise was cheaper in September.
right. Exactly.
There's a reason for
Exactly.
it. And so there is an element of risk when you're booking. And I mean, we know the hurricane season officially is like April to November, but we also know August, September into October is definitely the more active part of the season in this area. So there's a reason why you're paying less.
Excellent. All right, next question. I have never been on an airplane before. Can you give me tips and tricks for someone on their first flight? I can tell you a lot of questions related to first-time flyers and a lot of questions related to how I'm scared to fly. Help me not be scared. Tips, tricks,
I
ideas?
would tell you to, I know this is creepy, but do some research. You are safer in a plane than you are in a car. And if you look at the numbers, that bears itself out. You do not, and I do, again, I'm trying to tread carefully here. You do not see the number of traffic accidents, traffic fatalities reported on a worldwide scale like you do an airplane problem.
Gets everyone's attention when it's a big story.
Because it's rarer,
right.
more rare,
More rare. Like your
Rare?
steak.
Less rare,
less rare.
more rare.
It doesn't happen as often.
There you go.
I would tell you that if you want to try it, I would suggest that you book a very short trip and see what happens. There will be people who will tell you that, have a drink, take a pill. I would suggest you just try it. If you're one of those people, I know there are classes where they will take you in to an airplane and let you sit down.
Wow.
There are places.
There are,
Yeah, there
I've
are-
heard programs like there's also, I think somewhere is doing programs for kids with autism and stuff as well, giving them a little bit of what to expect.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know
To
that.
add a couple of things to Kevin's, first of all, what Kevin has said is very logistical. The problem with a lot of fears is that they're not always based in logistics. And so sometimes your fear is just, it doesn't matter how many stats you send at it. I'm, somebody very close to me has a lot of fears, and I know that sometimes I just want to say, "No, don't be silly. Of course, it's fine."
Fears are not reasonable. You can't reason
Right.
with
You
your fear.
can't talk them down. So I would say sometimes, the choice to do that is a whole different level. Kevin was talking about programs and different things, or I think there's actually some behavioral management therapies that help with that kind of thing. But that's a whole different issue outside of our field. I would say if you are going to take a short flight to try it, be careful. Because I'm now in an area where I have to take short flights to get to a major airport. I was on a prop plane. It had two propellers.
Don't get in a prop plane.
So sometimes the airline for that shorter flight or the airplane they're using will scare the crap out of you. And it's completely different than the plane that I would take to Hawaii.
Right.
And so keep that in mind as well.
I also think about things logistically.
Right.
That's how you rationalize
Right.
stuff,
That's how I rationalize
Yes.
it. The other thing that makes me always feel better is you can go on the website and see how many the internet, and see how many planes are in the air at any given time.
That makes me even more nervous.
Oh no, it makes me feel better. And you would be shocked at how common
Just in the United States, you could see
airline travel is. I mean, you can see exactly how often planes are taking off. They did that. There's a thing that ends up on Twitter all the time, and they show you how many different airlines and airplanes are in the air at any one time. And I think to myself, I think getting on an airplane seems like a very solitary activity until you realize that there are hundreds and thousands of people in the air at all times.
Yeah. My tip is this. I heard someone say this once. An airline doesn't want to have a problem. The pilot, the co-pilot, does not want to have a problem. You okay?
There's just a reflection behind you.
The stewardesses and the crew don't want there to be a problem. They all want to arrive safe too.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into flying to keep you safe. Because those people are precious to the airline, they're precious to their families. They don't want to have any kind of problem with anybody on their flights. So think of it that way. I think of it, you'd be if you're on a flight and let's say it's bumpy, and one of the first things they say is, "All right, we're going to stop service, and our flight attendants have been ordered to sit in their seats." That's because they're thinking of their safety first. So keep that in mind. But sometimes, you know what? The best way to get over a fear is to just do it.
Yeah.
I would also tell you to dress comfortably. Airplane travel, there's nothing glamorous about it. If you watch old movies, it's nothing like that. You are going to be crammed in like cattle. Dress comfortably. Make yourself as comfortable as humanly possible. Sort of manage your own travel.
And do some research. Oh, sorry, Craig.
So I was just going to say, off the fear thing, is my stomach still goes into knots every single time I fly. I don't want to say I'm afraid of it, but it's not a normal thing. So
Man was not meant to fly.
Man was
We are
not
forcing ourselves to get off the ground.
But ultimately, of any of the times that I have been nervous, and like when I flew by myself to go to Paris, at the end of the day, now that I'm a year away from that trip or years away from any of the trips, the flights are the last thing that are in my mind. It's the experience that I had once I got there. And so ultimately, yeah, it can stink, and you can be very afraid, and it can make you feel sick up to the second that you actually land to where you are going. But once you get there, in my experience, everyone's different, but in my experience, the end goal of the flying has always outweighed any fears that you might have had beforehand.
The flight is a small portion of your entire trip.
Yeah.
I would also suggest that you really weigh, the cost of the price of the flight and the number of times you have to take off and land. If you're afraid of flying, minimizing the takeoffs and landings, in
For
my
a direct
opinion,
flight.
I would rather pay a little bit more and alleviate some of that. I fly frequently, but I'm not a fan of the takeoff or the landing.
As many times as you have to interact with the ground.
That's right.
Oh, here comes the ground again.
I will pay extra to do that as
Right. We look for direct flights.
that's what I'm trying to say. I got stuck in that sentence.
My big thing, I am not nervous about flying at all. It's just what we do. And again, it's all about the thing I get to do when I land. But there's portions of the flight that I don't like. I don't like when they go to land and there's this acceleration, deceleration thing they do to moderate their speed. I think like, oh, don't go too slow because then we're just going to drop like a stone. Please don't go too slow.
Do you want to know what I do? I watch the flight attendants' faces.
Yes, well, that's what I'm saying. The flight attendants are worried about themselves.
I think to myself, I've never seen a flight attendant that looked worried. And if I do, I might lose my mind.
And then all of us start texting everybody.
We were on one flight into New Jersey where the flight attendants were worried. It was a rough one, but we got through fine. And
It was, as a
We're
matter
back
of fact,
on
when we flew back out of New Jersey, we got the same flight crew. And one of them said to me, I didn't think we were ever going to see you on another flight.
Just one more thing, too, because I know the question was about just the experience of flying. I would also, if you're flying for the first time, I would maybe try to stick with one of the major carriers and instead of going with a lower budget option like a Spirit, because that will not give you a good experience of what it's like to fly. Between the extra fees that you have to pay once you show up for bags and printing out your tickets and stuff, to everything that goes along with being crammed in there. Whereas if you're on a major carrier, a lot of times you're going to have a much more pleasant experience all around.
in general, planes are now being made to fit more people in the same amount of space, and seats are tighter. However, some of these airlines are abusing that. And if you do a budget airline, it's going to be even more cramped than another airline.
I would also tell you to alleviate as much stress as possible. And John's really good about humoring me. I find it stressful to get to the airport late. I find it really stressful. And that makes the flight stressful. So we leave enough time to get to the airport and stop and get a hot dog or a burger or something. And sort of, I would rather be early and wait at the airport than to be stressed going through. So alleviate those
And then when we
pressure
do
points.
those things, we want to know where the gate is and how far it is. Listen, can we go to the lounge? That's what happens when you travel first class. Yeah, that's what, can we go to the lounge, or is the lounge in another terminal that we now have to then build in 20 minutes to get to the gate, or is it right in the same vicinity? So we look at where the gate is.
It's very important to know where that first class lounge is.
sure
I get
is.
it.
Yeah.
It's hard to be you.
What happens is you go and you put your nose against it. Please let me
It's
in.
not hard to be me.
Can I talk just a couple things about the tips and tricks on the booking side of of airlines? Because the decisions start as soon as you're going to make the reservation. Craig had mentioned airlines. That's very important. They are not all created equal. Cheaper is not always better. Even now, some of the major carriers are offering a very base econo fare, where you're getting a seat on the plane, but there's a lot of restrictions. Sometimes it's you can't pick a seat, or sometimes you can't. You're paying extra for everything, like a bag on, and airlines are even charging now for your carry-on sometimes, not just for your checked. So you want to be aware of the rules of the fare you're booking. And every time you look at a price and you click on a fare, there's going to be something that says learn more or expand this. You need to understand what you're booking. Also, if possible, if there's a link that says preview seats, pull that up. Have a look at the seating configuration of the plane. Know, is it a 2 and a 2, a 3 and a 3, 2, 3, 2? Whenever the option is given to you, pay for your seats in advance. I know experienced flyers would disagree with it, and that's fine. We're talking about somebody new to flying. You don't want to be a
I
family
agree,
of
1,000%.
four.
Pay for your
I
seats
do it
in
all the
advance.
time too.
Trust me.
But you don't want to be a family of four leaving your seats up to somebody else.
Yeah, and cross-reference it with the seats with SeatGuru.com. It is, I have almost made terrible mistakes in seats before, just because I wasn't paying attention, went to their site, looked at it, because they rate it based on what you need to know, and you can save yourself a headache. Like, for the longest time, I was booking exit row seats since I'm taller, and I was booking them in the first of the exit rows, thinking any place closer is better. Well, those ones have limited recline, so you're not blocking the exit row behind you. So really, I was doing myself a disservice that entire time
Right.
by not having as good of a
Floor
seat with
recline.
it. So
And be honest
Excellent
about
site. Excellent.
yeah.
I want to say that again. SeatGuru.com. They give you dimensions of the seat if that's
Mm-hmm.
a concern for you. They give you location.
pitches how
Right.
how tilted the seat is. I would also tell you if you're a nervous flyer, I don't. John likes the window. I always book myself into an aisle seat. I like the flexibility that I am not beholden to anyone else to move.
Yeah.
That's me.
Because you want to get up, if you have to get up and use the restroom, you don't want to have to step
It's
over
just a whole
somebody. or something.
trapped. I don't like the feeling that I have to inconvenience someone else. The other thing that's a great tip is the earliest flights are usually the ones that have the least amount of cancellations and delays. And I know we live in Orlando, and in the summer, we have that 3 or 4 o'clock thunderstorm every single day. Once you get into thunderstorm time, those flights are delayed, canceled, moved. If you're looking to make this as streamlined as possible, sometimes it sucks because you get to your destination earlier than, your hotel's not ready. If you're a nervous flyer, book an early flight.
Can't tell you how many times we actually go after the first flight of the day. A couple of reasons too is your plane is there, so you're not waiting for your plane to come in from another destination that could delay you. So we may leave at 7:30 in the morning, which means you get up at 4:30 and do all your stuff. But we'd rather do that than take
We
the risk of
actually
being
missed
delayed.
an Adventures by Disney trip because of 2 days of thunderstorms. We never got to go. We just never could catch the plane. So earlier is better.
You started to say something.
I just be aware of how much space you need, whether it's long legs like Craig or a big butt like me. You need to know what that seat capacity is, and so I don't need leg room, but I need butt room, and I
telling you.
need room for the tray to come down, and so it's very important to me. So I will look most airline websites as well. When they tell you the aircraft that's traveling, you can also click further into their website and find out things like width and pitch and stuff of the seats. So be aware that it's not all created because you don't want to get on the plane and find out you and the kids are not sitting together, and you also want to be aware of the rules. So if, for example, Southwest, I think is one of the greatest airlines. I love Southwest. Great fares, free bags. Also make sure how much am I going to pay to bring a bag. That's important news too. But with Southwest, you don't pick your seat in advance. You check in 24 hours ahead and you get a boarding A, B, or C. If you're in a C or a late B, you're not getting seats together. And it doesn't matter that you're with your kid. They will do their best to accommodate you, but they don't have to. They're not indebted to you to do that because that's their policy. So make sure you're aware of the seating policies of the airlines you're choosing. Do not book on cheapest fare, and whenever possible, these guys have already said it, don't take a connection. More risk of missing a flight,
Lost
the extra
luggage.
time of making the connection, losing your luggage, and depending on where you're flying to and from,
I don't know if Southwest does it. We talked about bigger people. I'm a bigger people.
Southwest definitely does it. Go ahead. Yeah.
Southwest had a policy that when John and I would travel, we would buy 3 seats. And we would pay for the 3 seats. Southwest, if there was an empty seat on the plane, Southwest would refund our extra seat.
They've updated that policy now. There doesn't have to be an empty seat on the plane. They will refund the second seat, no matter what. They
You
ask.
have to pay for it in advance.
You pay for it in
can't just ask
advance.
for it, right?
They do ask that you pay for it in advance, so you do have to do that. But there has to be a reason. So if you show up there, part of my current issues is disability on one side of my body. So it was necessary for me to have the seat beside me empty to accommodate that. So I was able to do that by speaking to Southwest. They agreed that that's a reason to get a second seat, customer of size. But when I got to the airport, I didn't look like a customer of size that needed that, which I thought was thank you.
Really? Are you hitting on me?
What? I'm married. But anyways, there was a lot of question at the airport. And in fact, on one flight, I was denied the second seat. They took it back from me. So this is not a policy that you can just willy-nilly use. Oh, it'd be great to have an empty seat. There has to be a need for it, but it's a great policy for people who need it. So if you are a customer of size who does need an extra seat, Southwest is the only airline I know of that makes it so simple.
The
What
other
we
thing
do
we
is-
do is
wait.
when you have an extra seat, you don't have to go in your boarding group.
Right.
Because you've paid for an extra seat, because if you're in Group C, you can't necessarily guarantee that that extra seat is next to you. So they let you pre-board.
Yeah.
To prove that we need the space, we sit in the seat and show that there's this much light between us. Who do you want to put in this
Yeah.
much space?
Yeah.
Although
On flight they did.
on one flight, we were flying out of Las Vegas on Southwest, and we had our extra seat between us. And all of a sudden, they brought out on a man who had been beaten, had the pulp beaten out of him.
Face was bloody and swollen.
He had
drunk
gone
out of his mind.
to was supposed to be going to a bachelor party and went to an adult club instead, and apparently got
Handsy.
handsy. And they kind of shoved him in the seat between us. It was like putting a cork in a bottle. So
When
it does happen.
We've been on the plane where they tried to put, and it's like, sorry, that seat's been purchased.
Oh yeah, did they
And
still give you?
They
a
do. They give
card?
you a little piece of paper to put on. It's a terrible thing. Like, and you're saying, nope, the seat's been purchased. And
Now, see, we don't have that problem because when we get on the plane and we see that sliver of light, people walk by us like,
I ain't sitting there. There's no way I can get in there.
yeah, but they do. Southwest is fantastic for that policy. There just has to be a need for it.
I would say too, think about food on a plane. Sometimes they
Or
say,
lack thereof.
Right. They're going to say you're going to get a snack. You know, they may bring around a snack. It's not going to be great. You know, you're going to have a little Dixie cup full of something to drink. And if you're in the back of the plane, sometimes they don't even get to the back of the plane. I've heard them say that. We've stopped serving, so we apologize to the people in the back of the plane. I hear that from the front of the plane when they make that announcement.
You've heard them making announcements behind the wall.
Right. When I'm eating my filet mignon
Right.
and drinking my champagne.
Right.
I would also suggest
So,
that you bring
eat
an
beforehand.
empty refillable bottle because there are bottle filling stations in a lot of airports now. And this means you would have your own
Water on the
drink, your own
plane.
water. Or if you buy something in a shop where you could fill your refillable bottle, whatever. But you then don't have to wait for the service cart to come
I've
around.
learned now I always have my own bottle of water with me, you know, if I'm just buying it, you know, before I board. And I always have a couple protein or granola bars with me. You just never know when there's going to be a delay.
Yeah.
You know, there
Yeah,
could be
blood
a delay.
sugar
You
issues.
board, everything's great, and then you're waiting for people and you're delayed, or there's a problem with the plane and you're delayed. So I always have something with me. I've learned to not count on them having something for me.
Also, I have problems with my ears clogging.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the tricks are yawning and blowing your nose. I find the best thing is swallowing.
Me too. Drinking water.
Just a little sip
Yeah.
of water helps to clear your ears
Yeah,
out. So
especially
people
going
know.
down. It's the worst for me.
Yeah.
Landing, that's called.
Oh,
Yes.
I wasn't talking about. Never mind.
That's called landing.
So, yeah,
The correct term is landing. We
Plane
don't
just
use
goes
that.
down. You know,
We don't use that phrase on a plane.
Excellent. Any other tips? I think that was great that we went back to sort of tips of not being afraid, but more general tips of being on a plane. You bring a blanket because sometimes you get cold. You bring a scarf.
I actually got a scarf through Amazon, and it was reasonable. It's a cashmere scarf, and I thought the price was very reasonable compared to what I had looked in stores. And I keep it in a little drawstring bag. It's a pillow. It's a blanket. It's, you know, sometimes
Kevin doesn't believe me that time you get a pillow on a plane, it's brand new.
It's not.
They've just made it for
No,
you and put
they
it in
have
that
not.
plastic.
No, they
I
have
think
not.
it is.
No.
No, because when the pillow comes to me with hair, they are not going to convince me it was mine. So,
Maybe it's not your public hair.
nope, none of that either.
Oh, God.
You went there.
we're gonna oh my god, now I have to put my eyes out. We're gonna get to a question later on, but I have a really wide scarf. I've put it over my shoulders. I have trouble when it's really bright on a plane if I'm trying to sleep. I've pulled it up over my head. I've used it as a blanket.
A lot of times it's very cold on a plane.
It is.
And if you're not in first class, you don't always get a blanket and a pillow, you know?
No.
I think that's almost a
Tracy?
never.
Right, never. You
Never?
can pay. If you're there's usually on the menu of things that you can order. Most planes will have the price for the pillow and the blanket, so they will
How much
charge
is
you.
it?
It depends, but you don't get to keep it either.
It's rental.
It's yeah, and they didn't wash it before the next flight
I think
because
they
you
bring
can
it.
tell when you bring it out. So I bring my own. Never in a million years. Even in first class, when we've traveled first class, I'm not always sure there either. I check it like really closely.
I just bring my own. I am more comfortable with mine. If there's crud on my scarf, it's my crud. So,
It makes a good bib.
it actually does.
It catches the crumbs.
I'm prepared on a plane.
Right. So yeah, think about comfort. Think about a comfort item that's going to help you have a better flight. That's always going to help you be great on a flight. I'm going to skip the next question. It was again about booking air and airfare and stuff like that, and I think we've covered that extensively. All right. So moving on. Does Celebrity Cruise Line still have ballroom dance lessons? Also, do they have a lot of live music around the ship? I don't recall from our one and only Celebrity Cruise if there were ballroom dance lessons, but we didn't go looking for them.
You didn't?
We were on a
We
cruise ship,
didn't.
but it was a longer. I think it was the Radiance, the Royal.
It was a Royal Caribbean ship.
But I think we were sailing from Sydney to Hawaii, and I went to ballroom dance lessons twice.
Yeah.
I didn't dance.
We watched.
But I had a really good time.
They do have them on Celebrity. It's part of they call it the Celebrity Life activities or something like that. So they do have dance lessons. It's typically the dance crew, like the ones that perform in the shows and things that do them.
It's not like
I would
gigolos.
say this. If you have, if you're Chris and I, and you think, oh, wouldn't that be funny? Let's go take a ballroom dance. I think it's great. If you've already had 3 years of ballroom dance lessons, you probably don't want to go to the one on the ship.
Yeah, this is not Dancing with the Stars.
Right. And it's not that level. I know I've been on where there's been, a couple who clearly have taken lessons and they can make that routine work to any song and they go and they do their thing. I know there's cruise lines that would be more appropriate for people who want to ballroom dance on their cruise and do those types of dances with that type of music. I don't think Celebrity would be to that level, but I would say for beginners or for people who just like to dance for fun, sure.
Do they also offer other lessons? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times there's salsa lessons and things
Salsa
like
or
that.
the samba, maybe the rumba, I don't know.
Yeah, you're
That
just
little that little vacuum.
Yeah,
just
the
naming
Paso
vacuum
Doble.
cleaners. They might do the
She watches Dancing
You
with
can
the
tell
Stars.
Dancing with the Stars just started a new season.
they might do the Dyson.
Yeah,
You never know, the Eureka.
the shopping cart.
The great thing about any cruise line is there's always stuff being offered. I mean, there's always tons of stuff that we never take part in, but you can always find something.
And as far
to
as
do.
live music, I found Celebrity to have
my
more
gosh,
live
yeah.
music than the majority of ships I've been on lately. The more majority of cruise lines I've been on lately.
and in my opinion, better
Yeah,
than any other
I
cruise
thought
line.
so too. We find ourselves on Celebrity more watching for when is this going to happen and sitting and enjoying it more than I have on some other cruise lines. So I would say to us, we found an increase in the amount of live music being played.
I listened to the live music on my way to the casino, and I remember in the Celebrity Cruise not thinking it was terrible. We're on Royal Caribbean, you're like, oh, make them stop. Please, make them stop.
I have never heard such a rousing endorsement.
I was like, wow, they
my
should put
way to
that
the
in a
casino.
commercial.
That's in the brochure.
Yeah.
I think it was a compliment.
It was a very John compliment.
All right. Let's do one more question, our final question for this episode. How spontaneous can you be when working with a Dreams Unlimited travel agent? What's the minimum time in advance do you recommend contacting an agent to plan a trip? Is it easier to email an agent directly or use your form? How spontaneous can you be?
Like spontaneous in booking or just spontaneous throughout the planning?
I felt like spontaneous for this was booking. 'Cause the
Okay,
person
good.
asked,
Because
"What's the minimum?"
spontaneous during the planning can be stressful.
Yes, really.
Surprise! I'm going to go to a different resort. during the booking, we can do fairly last minute.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the closer you are, there's going to be issues with availability. Possibly, you're going to have to be very flexible with where and that kind of thing. But we can book up until I think Disney. I think a day or two before. It gets a little dicey making sure payments get done and stuff like that.
We used to
But-
have it on our forms that it was 14 days before.
Yeah.
I think we've changed that to 7.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of it is to, we want to have time to work with you and get to
Right.
know you and
If
have
you're
a proper
within
vacation.
7 days, you definitely want to email your agent or email a agent. You don't want to just submit the form and wait because every hour is going to count in that situation. But we can book fairly last minute.
If you don't have an agent, email me, john@dreamsunlimitedtravel.com, because one of the things I'll do is if I get a last minute request, I'll send it out to all the agents, say, listen, who has the time right now to work with somebody? Because, you might get, like Tracy might be like, I just can't.
Right.
I've got too many people traveling. I can't give this person the time. So let us find the agent who will work best with you.
No, I have to come up with a different scenario. Adventures by Disney, that is not true.
Absolutely. Your destination will matter.
Adventures by Disney, once you get within 30 to 40 days prior to a trip, Adventures by Disney does what they call it, they close the trip down. Because they have providers in your destination that they have to report to how much space do they need, and they return space to the provider that's not being used. So with Adventures by Disney, I would say you need 45 days beforehand. And there might be situations where that is even longer. So it's not a last minute thing. You can't call me up and say, I want to go to Italy next week.
And it's true of any destination, what's available. It's going to be a big part of it. Pricing.
Cruise lines, for the most part, you can do, I think 48 hours, 24 hours can get tough because once they've released the manifest back to the ship, I've had a lot of people say, well, those prices are too high. I'm just going to go to port that day and see what's available. No. Good luck. I do think there was a time where you could do that.
Can I say,
Very old thing.
Yes.
also the other thing too is there's a throwback to, well, if I wait till the last minute, I'll get a last minute fare.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
No.
Right, so you're telling me I can't win a ticket on a cruise line in a game of poker right before the ship leaves?
No, Leonardo.
You could during that time, Leonardo.
Right.
And don't believe her. You can fit on the door.
Really push that witch off.
Move over.
There's room enough for both of us.
There was a time when security wasn't as tight,
Exactly.
where you could show up at the port. I have relatives who have done this. Let's show up at the port, and we're going to go wherever the next cruise leaves. Those days are gone.
I don't even think you can do that at Disney. Can you? Can you show up at a resort at Disney and see if there's availability?
I don't believe so. I think you would have to call reservations. I think
Yeah.
you could do it same day, but I think you would have to. I don't know for sure. It's something I've never thought of
Yeah. I
doing,
think
but I
you do have
can't
You mean like show up
imagine.
at Port Orleans Riverside and say if
Right.
you got a room?
Right.
I
No,
wonder.
I think
You're
you
going to
do.
make the cast members' head explode.
Exactly. Exactly. As far as what's easier, if you already have an agent, you should be emailing your agent. If you don't have an agent, we ask you to fill out our forms because we capture a lot of information that's very important for us to make those reservations for you, find you the best price, work with you. So filling out a form, well, we're going to ask you to do that. And a lot of people say, well, I don't want to give you all that information. It's not for us. It's for the final
It affects
place
the
we're booked
price.
to.
It's really for you because
Yeah.
the more information we have, the more we can do the research and get a reply back to you quicker, as opposed to now having to come back to you and saying, okay, but I need
Right.
to know.
Right.
Many
Yeah.
travel providers, before they'll allow us to make even a hold on a reservation, will ask for
Minimum information.
minimum information.
Some want more dates of
Yeah.
birth and things like that.
And
so-
our forms do allow you, for World and Cruise and Universal, they do allow you to choose an agent name from the drop-down list. So if
Absolutely.
you already work with an agent or know you want to work with an agent, you want to, you're going to fill out the form, you've got everything. That's great too, because even if you're rebooking with an agent, we still need that new file opened in our
Right.
system. And we don't call it a file internally, but that's kind of the best way to explain it. It opens up a new file for this next trip. And so, if you already know this is what I want, this is my agent, I'm going to fill it out, send it in. Your agent would, have it, take care of it right away. Alternatively, email your agent directly. And sometimes you're at that stage where you're not exactly sure of things. You maybe don't know exactly which resort, and you have questions for your agent before you get to that point. So sometimes you start with an email and saying, okay, this is what we did last time with you. We're thinking about this, some thoughts. And you often I'm working back and forth with a client, and the form becomes the last step, because we've already made all the decisions that are needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed. But yeah, I think, and as far as working with them spontaneously during the trip planning process, you can make changes, and you can, you can change your mind and ask to do different things. That's not a problem at all.
One of the things I would like to mention here is that no matter what product you're working with, Dreams Unlimited Travel does not hold available space. If you've called Disney and they've told you that the resort you want is not available for the date you want, we will continue to watch for you and call, because availability does happen, but we don't have space that we can sell you.
Can't tell you how many times we get that question. Well, I submitted it to you because I can't book through Disney directly. They're telling me it's sold out. I figured you had rooms. That's not
we
how
have
we
to
work.
book through Disney.
Right. Yeah, we don't have inventory available. We don't have access to better rates than they do. We're very familiar with their systems and promotions and discounts and how they work. So we know the system well enough to try to get you discounts, but we can't create a price that they're not making available.
Right.
They just don't allow us. It's part of our agreement.
Correct. All right, I think we're going to end it there. We're going to save the rest of our questions for another show, but I think we've covered quite a bit. Thank you, everybody at home, for listening and watching to our general travel questions and answer show. I truly appreciate it, and we hope you have a great week and a great vacation.